Morning, everyone. Welcome to the Tuesday meeting of the BOCC. We'll start with the flag salute if you want to rise and join me. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic which stands one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay, I'll ask Commissioner Mortensen for a review of the minutes.
Good morning, everyone. I have reviewed the minutes as usual of the activities last week. I move to approve those minutes.
We have a motion to approve. Any comments, corrections? Not seeing any online. Call for a vote. Those in favor?
Aye.
I also vote aye. Before I run down through the consent agenda today, I will remind everyone at 9:30, we have a public hearing, so I may have to, depending on how the day goes, we may have to recess what we're doing at the moment and take care of the public hearing because it is advertised at 9:30. And so we'll try to be wary of that. On the consent agenda, we have a call for a public hearing to authorize the disposal of county-owned property scheduled for that hearing will be April 9th of this year at 9:30. Agreements, contracts, bid awards. We have a agreement with ARC Tactical to provide defensive tactics instructions and training to our Cowles County Corrections Department facilities. Total cost of that is $1,075. We have a completion letter to Slate Co. LLC for the Camelot Reservoir roof replacement project. That project came in at a total cost of $278,019.
Mr. Chairman, do you know, are those funds from our ARPA program?
I don't know that.
They're out of the regular reserves from the utility? Okay, thanks.
Regular reserves, okay. Annual renewal of our personal service agreement with CFM Strategic Communications, Inc. That's our lobbying group on the federal level. They work for us back in Washington, D.C. We look at that annually. Total retainer of $81,000. Resolution to approve and ratify the direct transfer of a retired 1994 Ford F7. It's an armored vehicle that we no longer use. We have a different armored vehicle now. We use a Bearcat. And so this resolution would transfer that vehicle to the Lincoln County Sheriff's Office that would have a use for it. We have a resolution rescinding resolution 20-023, basically revising the policy of the board. Commissioners' absences due to emergencies. It's basically we've updated our human resource policy on when we close and notifications and those type of things. We made no major changes to it other than tried to clarify the language and make it more clear. Letters and notices, affidavit of resume for the month of February. That's basically stating that all of our minutes or documents and et cetera from our meetings has been posted. Vouchers this week in the amount of $7,789,109.98. And that's the consent agenda. Any questions, comments?
Mr. Chairman, I move we approve today's consent agenda as presented.
We have a motion to approve the consent agenda. Last chance for comments or questions. I'm not seeing any. Okay. Seeing none, we'll call for a vote. Those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
I also vote aye. And motion items today, Office of Public Defense. Was Ian coming over? Is he online? Yeah.
So I think this is a recommendation
Yeah.
from our Public Defense Office to deal with outside lawyers, not working, not hired by the county, but who deal with conflicts. Periodically, we're a small enough community that sometimes some of our personal or our public defense lawyers are familiar with witnesses and other folks involved in cases. And so they need an independent counsel just to make sure that there's no accusation of conflicts of interest.
This is a contract that we've had for 16 years plus or minus was the guess yesterday that we've been in deal with them. The only real change to this, and it was a suggestion by Commissioner Mortensen, which is a good one, that it does include a termination clause now in there for performance where before it never. So that's really the only change to this contract. It's Ian, in talking with him yesterday, said it's been working for us with this group a long time, so.
If you'll allow me, Mr. Chairman, our discussion and workshop yesterday on this topic reminded me of some moves underway at the state level to reduce caseloads for public defenders fairly significantly. So much to the extent that our manager said, if the proposals are finally adopted by the state Supreme Court, the number of public defenders will go up between 1/3 and 50%, which will require a lot more expenditures. The state doesn't give us very much money for public defense. Of course, public defense is one of those rights under the Fourth Amendment of the U.S. Constitution that the state of Washington is obligated to provide for. Their method of providing for it is to assign it to the counties to take care of it, passing the buck literally
Yeah.
to us. So something to look forward to. Doesn't really have anything to do with this particular motion, other than it's really difficult to get lawyers. There just aren't that many coming out and wanting to work in more rural counties.
Mr. Chairman, I move that we approve the agreement with Morgan Law PLLC as has been described and is described in the documentation.
Okay. We have a motion to approve. Any questions, comments?
So is this basically just a monthly retainer fee and additional costs, court costs would be added on as necessary? Is that what that is?
I think it's only if they take cases. I think that's the case amount.
Okay, well, I guess then why the monthly installment? If it's only when they take cases, aren't you billed by the case?
But each case lasts a different length of time, so they have it billed out by monthly installments, so.
I think it may be just a retainer and up to some amount of cases with that. So I think it's money we spend regardless, which is, I think, your question. In other words, it's not a bill by case.
Well, as I read this, it looks like we're gonna pay monthly installments of $12,000, and then compensation for trial time and other services is to be paid upon presentation and approval of the billings. I mean, that strikes me as that's $12,000 a month, whether you use them or not. And if you do use them, then they can charge for additional billing costs for the court costs.
Yeah, I think your interpretation is accurate. Uh, we, we saw this quite a long time ago, but I think that was a question I asked and the answer was, it's like you have a lawyer, you put him on retainer. If you use him, your retainer, has been well spent. If you don't use them,
Do we have that many instances where there's,
you don't want to hear not
In a-
the right
in a
numbers.
month?
I don't have them, but I think Commissioner Weber mentioned we're under a lot of pressure to increase the availability of attorneys for OPD.
right? Okay,
Any other questions, concerns? Not seeing any hands. Okay, we have a motion on the floor. We'll call for a vote. All those in favor,
Aye.
Aye.
also vote aye. Thank you. And then we have Public Works. These two kind of go together, right? Yeah.
Good morning, Commissioners. Mike Moss, Public Services Director, along with Sean Rowe, Finance Manager for Public Works. I believe Kelly's going to put a PowerPoint up on the screen for us today. We're here because we have two agreements on the agenda pertaining to the headquarters landfill gas to energy project. Go ahead and go next slide, Kelly. So I'll give you a little bit of history before we go into the agreements. The headquarters landfill history. Weyerhaeuser opened the landfill in 1993. It's a 300-acre facility that the county purchased back in 2014. So we've been operating for 10 years now at headquarters. We do have an estimated life at the current flow to the landfill to 2082. And we approximately have about $37 million acquisition cost. That includes the purchase of the landfill, but also the leachate lines and other things that we did at the time in 2014. The picture there, you can see there's a tarp, active landfills in the middle of the tarp system there. The road to the right is the main 1600 line that Weyerhaeuser uses for a lot of their logging operations. Sorry, she moved ahead there.
Slides keep going.
Yeah, you're moving forward.
Okay.
We want to go to what is landfill gas, which is slide number 3, Kelly. There we are. Landfill gas is methane, carbon dioxide, non-methane organic compounds, otherwise known as NMOCs. It is produced by the decomposition of waste within the landfill. Currently, it's at our landfills collected by gas wells that are placed in the landfill. What you see in the picture there are actually manifolds after the gas wells come to the side of the landfill. And then it's tuned at the top. You see some 4 orange knobs on top of the manifold. We tune the wells that way, and then it flows from this system here down a pipeline over to the flare system where we currently burn the methane off. The next slide actually shows our enclosed flare systems. We have 2 flares at the landfill. One built in 2014, the second one in 2017. We're pretty efficient with our burning there at 99.998%. It burns at a very high degrees at 1700. When we decided we're going to continue to keep the landfill within the county and public works, one of our main goals is to make sure at a certain point we no longer use these flares to burn off methane, that we're going to somehow reutilize that gas and use it in a different form. And our form now is to hopefully use it to produce energy at the landfill. And that's why these 2 agreements are in place, hopefully today. The next slide is actually energy plant in a different part of the country since ours is not built yet. How does a landfill gas energy plant works? The landfill gas goes through a scrubber system to actually pull out the impurities of the gas, so it does not damage the engine. The engines then burn the methane to create energy. The energy is sent to transmission lines to help feed the grid. I know it's a pretty simple overview. I know it's a lot more detailed than that, but I just want to give you an overview of exactly what the process is to get landfill gas in a better form for us to be able to send it to energy into the system. The next slide looks at actually a gas energy plant that's in New Mexico. Our agreements today is with our great partners, Cowlitz PUD. It's a fairly large project for this county. It's a $40 million project with a $6 million county contribution. The power plants at the landfill would produce up to 8.5 megawatts, which is enough to equal to powering 4,500 homes in the community. Hoping to break ground later this year in 2024 and be fully operational in 2026. The proposed site, this is a picture of the landfill. On the left-hand side of the screen, you see in the trees there, a white building, and it's hard to tell, but that's where our main office is at, along with our scales. Down where it says below current flare systems, the road that comes in, that's the main 1600 line that Weyerhaeuser uses, like I talked about earlier. That's the landfill in place there. The active site right now is the middle of the landfill. You can see some operations in the middle of the black tarps. Our current flare system I showed pictures of is circled there, and the proposed site is further north where our leachate ponds and pumps are located at for easy transmission for the PUD to get to the main lines. There are similar projects in the Northwest, quite a few actually, but we penciled out two here, LRI landfill in Pierce County, about twice the size. They have a 15 megawatt energy plant. In the Klickitat County down the gorge, they started originally about the same size as us, 8.4 megawatts. Then they expanded to 10.5. Then they actually went all the way up to 26 megawatts in 2011. And then they transitioned over, which is the picture you have there. I don't actually explain what the picture is, but that's their current RNG plant. They are the fourth largest landfill in the country, so they produce a lot of methane. That's why they were able to move forward and move to different projects along the way. Not saying we're going to be at that point, but I just want to show you some other. This isn't a new project at all in the Northwest. I just want to show there's some similarities in other landfills. The summary of agreements, there's two agreements on there. There's a contribution agreement from the county, but also an MOU. The contribution agreement talks about us paying up to $6 million for the project. The PUD will own and maintain the equipment and the facilities, and also in addition, they'll be operating the project. The MOU goes a little bit more detail. We'll provide the land at the headquarters landfill. We're also required to get them gas and maintain the gas collection, and also be tuning our wells to make sure they get good quality gas. The terms of that MOU is 25 years with 5-year renewal periods. And the MOU is really just the first step for us. We'll be having a larger, more depth, detailed contract with PUD and the county coming in the next few months. We have to make sure we get this in place for the PUD, for them able to break ground, but we know we have a lot of work ahead of us to get the final agreement in place. There was a lot of work and effort and a big contribution already made by the PUD. So we really appreciate their time and effort in helping us out in this project. Chris and Andy have been amazing to work with at the PUD. I know they're in the audience today if we have some more detailed questions for them. But also Steve Taylor's here today for the PUD, and he'd like to read a statement.
Sure.
Good morning, Commissioners. Steve Taylor, Director of Regulatory and Regional Affairs from Cowlitz PUD. Happy to be here this morning and happy to see the culmination of these agreements, see the project move forward. Cowlitz PUD appreciates the opportunity to partner with Cowlitz County to advance the development of the proposed landfill gas renewable energy project. Our collaborative efforts to date have facilitated the project's early design activities, including environmental permitting, and helped secure funding in the state's supplemental capital budget. Approval of these agreements before the board today will allow the PUD to take the next steps in developing a new renewable generation resource in our proverbial backyard. Upon build-out, we anticipate generating enough renewable electricity to power the rough equivalent of 4,500 homes annually, while benefiting both the county's and the PUD's compliance efforts in meeting the state's clean air and clean energy regulatory standards. This partnership also advances our region's economic development goals and supports job growth and growth of electric load that comes with it, with a reliable, renewable resource produced from landfill methane gas that is currently being flared. We would like to thank the county staff for their efforts and assistance that has gotten us to this point in the project. Cowlitz PUD also acknowledges the support this project has received from our legislative delegation, especially Representatives Zabarno and Orcutt and Senator Braun, that resulted in a $4.9 million designated grant within the state capital budget this month. While there remains a considerable amount of work ahead in bringing this project to fruition, Cowlitz PUD looks forward to partnering with the county and developing common sense solutions for the clean energy transition. And I'm happy to answer any questions. Also, as was mentioned, our Director of Power Resources, Chris Vallot, and Power Resources Engineer, Andy Davis, is here in the audience.
Thank you.
Okay.
Any questions?
So in the slideshow that we saw a little bit earlier, staff pointed out that we began flaring methane with the construction of those stacks after we purchased the plant. Before that, before Cowlitz County bought the landfill, it was owned by Weyerhaeuser for industrial waste, which didn't produce a substantial amount of methane. The change brought about the introduction of what we call municipal solid waste. That's the stuff that decays and creates the methane gas. Hence, we had to start doing the flares. It seemed to us to be a terribly irresponsible environmental waste to just simply burn that valuable resource. And we looked for an opportunity to take advantage of that once we decided to keep ownership and operation of the landfill plant. So it's it was a little daunting because we discovered that Cowlitz County's municipal solid waste alone didn't generate enough to justify the development costs of a conversion. And so one of the things that happened, one of the results is that we authorized solicitation of contracts from other counties to bring their waste here. And I remember going to our city partners around that time to make sure that they understood this was an important trade-off, that in order to make this conversion possible, we needed to generate more landfill from other counties. Turns out that those counties had to transport their waste all the way to landfills in Eastern Washington, Republic being one of the main ones, at an incredibly expensive transportation cost. And we found ourselves in a pretty unique situation where we could actually charge outside customers outside of Cowlitz County, higher rates, but they thought it was a great deal because it was lower than having these huge transportation costs all the way across the state. So a win-win situation all the way around. And one of the consequences has been the Cowlitz County General Fund is charging rent to the utility. The general fund underwrites the bond issue for acquisition of the landfill and the pipeline. So taxpayers have benefited from increased funding for general fund expenditures. You may have noticed, if you've been listening to our meetings over the last several years, we have been able to spend a lot more money on maintenance and operation improvements because we have this extra cash coming in. So again, it's been a great partnership, and we're able to serve the public better, help improve the environment. And I'm pleased we've gotten this far. It's been a long process, about 4 years or so in the making, or 5. And I'm really, really proud of the work that our staff has done in putting together this new enterprise that was fairly more complex than the old Denaway landfill. But this is a kind of a hallmark, I think, in terms of intergovernmental cooperation, environmental protection, and just good economics for this county.
Yeah. I don't think there's any question. It's a good project, and glad we can work with them. The one thing I will touch on is the contribution, which I don't think we have any qualms making there. There is possibility once PUD gets whole that would come back to the county. So it, you know, that at some point in time could even return.
Correct. Yeah, that's in the agreement there that once the PUD is made whole, that the county will be paid back their contribution at a certain point.
Yeah. Any other questions on this project?
I presume that one of the possible alternatives was to scrub, clean the gas and put it into the natural gas pipeline that's not far away that already runs down to a PUD generating station and to the mills. What was the comparison on that?
So yes, we did look at that opportunity. We found out that the pipeline being a few miles down the headquarters lane, the compression into Williams Pipeline was a significant energy cost at that
I missed that again, but what?
the compression of the gas into the Williams Pipeline would have far exceeded the cost of the generation. So in other words, it was too expensive to compress it into the pipeline than
Okay, so you're telling me that a compressor station to compress it was much more expensive than $40 million for a generating facility where we have generating facilities down line. So that's what I hear you saying.
yes, sir.
You know, we can jump into, it helps provide some insight. So in our analysis. Yeah, that's a great question. It's a great question, and it's something that we looked into in our initial analysis. And so what we found was the consumption from the compressor station alone was around the order of 3 megawatts. So if you remember, Commissioner Weber had maybe noted that was 8.5 megawatt facility. So you're consuming quite a bit, just on an energy basis right there, just in the compression alone. And then the pipeline run that we had to would have to install to link into the pipeline, it increased the cost plus the scrubbing equipment.
Yeah, it'd be
gosh,
about a 7-mile pipeline. I think it was about 25 to $30 billion for the pipeline. And then the capital cost for the RNG scrubbing quality versus the Rice engines was about 2 to 3 times the capital cost for that equipment.
Yeah, they were well in excess of like $100 million at that point. So this was more economic option for us. And it provides a local electricity supply, where we're not have to rely on a long distance transmission or anything. This will be local to the county.
So if, I think I can help add to that argument, the natural gas in the United States is plentiful. And it runs about $2.50 per million BTU.
Yeah, right now, I think it traded this morning $1.70.
It's down to $1.70? Yeah, so you're talking about providing a commodity that has great fluctuations. The only value to RNG, renewable natural gas, which is still methane gas, is that it is subsidized by the government with all kinds of nice brownie points. Those come and go. While electricity is something that you've got to produce. And I don't see us ever requiring decrease of electricity. And so it just seems from a business case, long-term stability case, you would go with electricity until the politics iron out. The counterexample, the price of natural gas in Europe can fluctuate rather wildly, but if it's probably at least 10 or 12 bucks, and it's been up to 20, which is 10 to 15 times the price here. With that in mind, you can understand why it's a difficult decision overall, but I think you're making the right one.
Okay, so I want to hit this from a couple of different angles here. First of all, what's the estimated cost per kilowatt hour? I guess not only from this plant, what's the current cost per kilowatt hour from the other plants that are noted in the slides? And what's the cost per kilowatt hour estimated for Cowlitz PUD versus the cost per kilowatt hour right now that I pay for my house? It's going to get loaded into that resource base, I'm sure, and it'll be part of Cowlitz PUD's resource. So you got a rundown on that?
Yeah, we're right around 6 cents per kilowatt hour on the generation on this. That's our levelized cost of energy. I don't have the economics on the other projects that were listed in there. I think that might be something the utility would hold close to them. I don't have that information at hand, Andy, unless you have any sense of that. And yeah, kind of the residential rate's pretty close to 8 cents per kilowatt hour. So it's slightly under that. And then I would say market on a forward-looking basis is somewhere on the 7.5 to 9.5, somewhere in that range. There's a lot of volatility right now as you're seeing more of these, more electrification, more server farm development. It's kind of straining the region where there's a demand for more generation resources than we have out here.
Okay, so if I understood Commissioner Dahl's comments a minute ago, that ultimately somewhere down the road, when the PUD gets their money out of this thing, that ultimately maybe the county's going to take it over. Is that wrong? Is that?
Yeah, I'm sorry, not to interrupt there, not to take it over, but the county contribution would maybe be paid back once they're made whole from their contribution, not actually take it over as a county operation. It'd still be ran by the Cowlitz PUD.
And I get your point. You're kind of like when we get paid back on a forecast basis, kind of what's that time frame look like, maybe?
Yeah, that's where I'm headed.
Yep. And so, Andy, I think with the latest numbers that you updated.
Yeah, right now we're estimating approximately 8-year return.
Yep.
Okay, so clarify for me, it's not the county would take it over, it is what? It's just basically they would continue to operate it, but then the net benefits would come back to the county?
Yes, to pay back our $6 million. Yes, correct.
Okay.
Yep.
But you're gonna pay back the PUD first?
Yes, correct.
Okay.
And the PUD gets credit from the state for renewable energy, right?
Correct. Yeah, there'll be some renewable energy credits associated with this generation.
Which, and the state is mandating a diversification of your energy sources.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
The state's driving towards 100% renewable generation here.
Are they admitting that hydro is still renewable?
Yeah.
That's been an issue, I know.
One additional, I presume that you'll still need a backup when you're maintaining. So one or both of the flares will need to be maintained as backup.
That is correct. Those will be still in place. Yes.
Okay.
Okay. Any other questions? Did we already have a motion or I
Nope,
entertain
I'm
one?
ready to.
Okay,
Mr. Chairman, I move that we approve our contribution agreement with Cowlitz Public Utilities District Number 1 for the headquarters landfill gas to energy project and the memorandum of understanding with Cowlitz County PUD for the headquarters landfill gas to energy project.
okay. We have a motion on the floor to approve 9 and 10. Any last questions? Not seeing any hands. I'll call for the vote. Those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
I also vote aye. Thank you, guys.
Thank you.
Appreciate it. Hey, we're at the 9:30 for the public hearing. Thanks to the PUD for coming out and sitting with us. We appreciate it.
Good morning, Kathy Funk Baxter, Finance Director, and I'm here today to submit resolutions for amending the 2023 budget as well as the 2024 budget. And we've publicized this public hearing, and so we have a number of budget amendments. These were discussed at a budget workshop on March 11th, I'm sorry. And the majority of our budget amendments for 2023 were some minor adjustments so that we could process payments and things like that without exceeding budget capacity. And then the majority of our 24 budget amendments have to do with increasing revenues as well as increasing expenses. And primarily, all of our collective bargaining agreements were finalized. And so we have quite a few adjustments for those wages and associated benefits, and a multitude of different miscellaneous adjustments that came about after reviewing our 2024 budget. So I'll entertain any questions you might have.
How many times a year? I mean, we do this to true up our budget from what we thought it was going to be and then what it looks like. And how many times a year we do this?
I anticipate typically you have at least 4. You may have
About
more.
Once a quarter would be
Quarterly.
reasonable.
My goal is to do quarterly budget amendments after reviewing. So for example, if we have new revenues coming in, we would do a budget amendment to true up those revenue estimates and forecast. The same thing goes for expenses.
So for example, we just approved a $6 million expenditure. That's not in the current 2024 budget. So that will be an amendment probably in June at our second quarterly
Yes.
review, just to make sure that we follow the state law of spending budgeted monies. So,
Yeah, that's not included in this budget amendment.
right. So the contract negotiations are not requiring new revenue. We had the revenue in our reserves. We anticipated that. We set a certain amount of money aside, and now we have to true up each of the department's budgets that
To
were
the
affected.
department's budgets, yes.
Yeah.
So for the general fund, we had anticipated some of those amounts, and we had placed an estimate in our non-departmental fund to help cover those. And so that's an offset to those increases. Other funds, such as road fund, things like that, they're either pulling the excess adjustments from their existing budgets the same way, reducing another budget, or from their fund balance.
Earlier in the meeting, we approved a motion awarding an armored vehicle to Lincoln County, one that we had owned, that we don't use anymore. It's too expensive for operations. They think they can make use out of it, so it was an easy transfer. But one of the other budget amendments today and for the 23 budget was the handling of the purchase and acquisition of a Bearcat vehicle to kind of replace the armored vehicle that we just gave up today. That was something that we approved, and we had several hearings on and negotiated with the sheriff on. And, final determinations were made. So I think bonds had to be purchased and agreements signed with different contributing entities to pay for it.
There's a fine, and there's contributing agreements to pay some of the operating expenses. And so you see a small budget amendment in here chewing up. We created its own fund
Right.
last year in 23, but we need to true up and transfer some money out of the general fund where they had previously been collected, those funds in general fund, and now they're going to be collected in their own fund.
Other questions from up here? Seeing none, we'll open public hearing to the public if you have any questions. I'm seeing none, so we'll close the public hearing then. And entertain a motion.
Mr. Chairman, I move that we approve items 11 and 12 on the agenda. Those are adjustments and amendments to the 2023, and I'm throwing in the 2024 if that's acceptable.
Perfect. So we got a motion to approve the items 11 and 12, which is the 2023 and 2024. Any questions on that? Not seeing any hands. We'll call for the vote. Those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Also vote aye. Thank you, Kathy. Hey, just before I open it up to public comment, tomorrow's the 20th, right? We got a workshop at 2:30 will be the Children's Discovery Museum will be in. If you have any interest in listening to that, they will be in tomorrow at 2:30. With that, we'll turn it over to you. We'll open up public comment. Anything you want to comment on? Sure. I don't know if the green light's on or just make sure.
Oh, it's always on.
Okay,
I speak loud enough anyway.
okay.
Yeah, I'm here again about Young Road in Rose Valley. It's, you know, I heard that you guys have, 2029 before you rebuild the road there. The thing is, the county is giving out permits to build houses like nothing. There was 120 acres that a developer bought. It's making millions off of it. It was supposed to be broken up into 5-acre lots. Now they're breaking them up into 2.5-acre lots. Then he bought another 40 acres across the street. And the road is very dangerous. I had to go out and buy a new set of tires for my car because I get pushed off the road and it damaged the side of the tires. How is it that you can just keep giving out permits when you don't have a safe passage? Reason is I'm doing this because if somebody gets hurt, the county knows about this. Second time I've been here about it. But you guys don't have a problem giving permits out. You looked at it.
Yeah.
You went up there with Pete, you saw how dangerous the road is.
And I know we had some, on that one corner, we had some plans to try and expand that and do some right of way stuff. And I don't know where that's gone or where they're at on that. That's what's running through my mind is figuring out where we're at.
Well, you got a lot of dyslexic drivers too, because they think that 25 means 52, the way they're driving. We got a lot of commercial trucks coming up there. And I mean, even a lot of the neighbors are wanting speed bumps. Because somebody's gonna get killed or somebody's gonna get hurt on that road. And I mean, today I just can't understand why they keep giving out permits. There's been over 24 houses built up there in the last 2 years. And there's more coming up.
And I thought when they reached a certain point, I thought they had an easement to run a road out a different way.
Well, that's another 75 acres that Nelson's trying to get right now, but he's not gonna get an easement through my property. And all the other neighbors said he's not gonna get an easement through it.
Yeah. I'll have to get familiar with it again. I don't know if you have anything to add, Savannah, or.
Savannah Clement, Public Services. So as Commissioner Dahl stated, we are very familiar with Young Road. I can't speak to the permits issued. I'm not in building and planning, but from a roadside, I know Susan Eugenis, county engineer, is online. And we are actually working on our private road policy to talk about the classifications and upgrading it tomorrow at 1:30 at our workshop, if you'd like to attend. And we're going over some high-level bullet points of what we'd like to modify and change to alleviate situations like Young Road. So I'm not the expert or the engineer, but I do know that is something on our list, and the project is a ways out. Those projects can change and evolve depending on need and the discretion of the board. So I would invite you to attend the workshop if you can, or reach out to County Engineer Susan Eugenis as well.
Yeah, I mean, it's just a lot of talk. That's Washington State. I saw the other day that Cowlitz County has one of the worst roadways in Washington State, our roads. because they're falling apart and they're not being taken care of. And believe me, I drive around Cowlitz County a lot. But I mean, they didn't have a problem raising my taxes up to $6,500 a year when I started out at 4,500 5 years ago. And it keeps going up and less service. And it's getting irritating that these problems aren't being taken care of. You can just do a lot of talking about it, but nothing gets done. So that's all I got to say about that. So I'll be back again.
Thank you.
Anything else? Okay. Seeing nothing else, we will adjourn. Thank you.